Imagine you're sitting in a box. It's small, it's cramped, but it's familiar. Outside, you can hear the waves of the ocean, you can smell the salt air. You love the beach. And the walls of this box, they're just cardboard. You could push them down in a second. But instead of pushing, you'd find a rocking chair inside the box. You wrap yourself in a blanket and you stay put. Years ago, when I was a newly separated young mom with a 2-year-old, I had a meditation of just that scene. It was my reality. And in that moment, I had a revelation that changed everything. My ex-husband wasn't the one keeping me in that box. The anxiety, the sadness, the feelings I had of failure, of failing my daughter, of failing at my marriage, I was doing it all to myself. And as difficult as that can be to admit, it was truly transformational for me. It was a liberating moment of my life, because if I'm the one building the box and keeping myself in the box, I'm the one who can get out of the box. Welcome to Becoming You, the Path to Consciousness. I'm Terry Hasty.
And I'm Haydn Hasty, and in this episode, we're not going to talk about the war in Iran or politics or personalities, but we are here to help you build a bridge between a world that is dissolving and the new world that is being created.
We're exploring really how to become. How do we move from this to that?
Exactly. In this episode, we're talking about how to get from here to there. How do we move from being controlled by the forces and dynamics of our life that we have not been able to resolve, to being able to resolve them that will release this greater understanding and growth in our life. And everybody has their particular issues that they're working on, because the truth is, whether it's a cardboard box or it's a mental or emotional prison, each one of us has our own particular knot, K-N-O-T.
So if we take it down to kind of an elementary level, how does milk become cheese? How do grapes become wine? How does this become that? And I remember when I was a little girl, I would be in my twin bed in my room I shared with my sister, and I'd put my feet up on the wall and look at my kind of outstretched legs, and I would wonder, how does life unfold? What is this all about? I didn't have any answers of not only what was my future going to hold, but how do you even participate in it? What is all of this happening around me? And I really didn't understand how to move forward it sometimes. As easy as my life was, I remember questioning things even as a 9 or 10-year-old.
Well, I didn't know either. I knew that the reality, even when I was young growing up, and like I think I got my first job when I was 13 years old. I knew that the reality that I had, or that I was living, was a reality that I didn't want to be part of. Work a job that you don't like, go to school that you don't like, having to do homework that you don't like. Just never-ending process of trying to figure out how to be okay. The list just goes on. And then, of course, we become adults and the problems, thicken and become a little more physical than we had when we were young. I don't think that the situation is much different in other aspects of human life, which is to say that once I did learn what the answer to my questions were, I would often ask myself, how come nobody ever told me this? So I think it's a really good place to start in this episode to set up this 2-part series of looking at the question of how this becomes that. Because it essentially, if there's an issue you have and you hadn't figured it out, there are 2 dynamics that are always at play. Number one, you haven't asked what the answer is. You haven't gone to someone that you trust and say, here's the problem I have, what's the answer to it? Or no one has ever taken the time to tell you about it. And chances are the reason they didn't tell you was because they didn't know either. And it's not because the answer isn't there, it's that the answer, and this is what the process of evolution in the world today is all about, is that the answer exists at a different level, or as I often say, a different meta system.
It's like you tell me sometimes, Hayden, I can get fixated on why is this happening? And I keep saying, but I don't understand why it's happening, or I don't understand why it won't work, or I don't understand. We stay in the problem rather than asking what is the answer. So let's, if you're okay with it, we're going to start at the beginning. And at the beginning, I took birth into this wonderful set of circumstances in Minneapolis. You took birth into a complicated...
That's kind.
and kind of devolving, actually, set of circumstances. And I have a lot of compassion for that here in North Carolina. And we all come into these circumstances or setup, and we assume that that's how the setup is. I remember walking to school in the second grade with my new friend at the time, Judy, and she told me that her father died, and that's why they had moved up to Charlotte. And I was shocked. I had no idea someone could not have a daddy. We grow up thinking that our life is just the way it is, and it takes a while to figure out that that's not true, and it takes even longer to figure out that it doesn't have to be any certain way.
Of course not, but we don't know that because we're stuck in the box. We're stuck in the old mindset that, that the largest part of it was developed when we were young. But let's say that the individual believes that, fate is fixed, and you don't have any control over where you've ended up, that's reality, that's the way life is. Life isn't fair.
Life sucks, get a helmet.
Life sucks, get a helmet, yeah, etc. But if that is the case, then there really would be no point in being here in a physical body. But of course, that's not true. There is reason and purpose and truth, including, as we drift very quickly up to the highest level here, I chose my circumstances at birth. You chose your circumstances at birth. And I realized that we just took a spiritual leap right there. But those are the differences between those two understandings. One creates this reality, the other creates a very different reality.
And back to my experience as a 29-year-old of being in this metaphorical box in my meditation, I think it's a really powerful analogy for our human condition, this image of being stuck in a box, because the design flaw of the box is the instructions for getting out of the box are there, but they're written on the outside. And from the vantage point inside the box, the situation, good or bad, like me, I'm going through a divorce, I felt like it was really bad, but it feels permanent, like I'm always going to be stuck in this box. I've created this, and now I've got to, live with it, so to speak. You don't know what you don't know. So whether it's experience or just consciousness or awareness or truth. And so the box becomes your entire universe, like your reality.
Consciousness is the process of getting out of the box, but it's not a physical exit. It's as Durkheim said in his book, he said, awakening is but a slight shift of attitude, and it's a shift of consciousness.
Would you mind, I love you using Durkheim's quote, the slight shift of attitudes helped me many a time, but could you say that one more time about evolution and consciousness?
Well, if being in the box is the starting point, and it is, then evolution is the mechanism or the means by which you will get out of the box. But part of that understanding that will happen is the realization that there is no box. But everybody's been there.
But we create the box in order to evolve?
Yes,
okay.
Exactly.
I got you.
It's a tool. It's circumstances that the soul uses to evolve. But everybody's been there, and I can remember that in my life too, of being stuck in that box and having no clue that there was anything else outside of that. And it is absolute misery and pain and suffering. To
because
live that way.
We don't know there's anything else outside of it, we get the blanket and the rocking chair and just, say, well, this is how it is. This is the best it is, and I'll be comfortable and safe and not know and not seek the answers that are on the outside of the box.
The mind doesn't grasp the essence of the experience or the purpose of the experience. And I know how that sounds. We're not discounting suffering or minimizing pain. But it's true that this is how this is going to become that. that we first must recognize that we are the creator of our perceptual fields and how we're viewing the circumstances.
Including, I'm the creator of my own pain and suffering.
And you're the creator of your own joy. So think about it this way. If you're not the creator of your own experience, then you have no power to change it. You can blame everybody else all you want to, your past circumstances, the people that hurt you, and say that you are a victim of external forces. And I was a master of that. I love talking about my suffering and my pain.
I'm only laughing about it because it was 30 years ago. I didn't laugh then.
Well, look what they did to me. I would like to think that it was longer than 30 years ago, but
yeah.
But I know that experience so very well. But if the cause of your pain or your, I guess you could say your disconnect in your life is out there in the world because of something, an experience that happened, then the mind assumes, well, the solution must lie in changing that experience or changing the outer circumstances. And of course, that's not how it's going to work. Because what that means is that if you are okay with that, if you are okay sitting in the rocking chair in the box, then you're never going to be able to solve it or stop it or keep it from happening again.
And boy, isn't that the truth.
And, as I said, that the ego loves talking about my pain and my suffering. And look what happened to me.
It loves being the mistreated protagonist. Like that, my ego's never the antagonist. I'm always the mistreated protagonist.
Well, the question becomes, and this is the innate drive inside every single human being, how do I become that which I want to become? How do I become the truth of who I am? How do I live an exceptional, fulfilled, extraordinary life? And this is part of the reason why the collapse is taking place in the world today, because we're getting ready to begin this movement from consciousness to from self-awareness to consciousness, because that's where the answers are.
I think the key to understanding those answers and the questions is really dependent upon understanding the issue of consciousness. And this morning when I was walking Tico, our dog, and I was moving into pretty deep fear and worry because of current circumstances and the fact that our son is in the military, and I was thinking, well, I'm going to post this, I'm going to say this, I'm going to, I was kind of raging in my head about everything that's going on. And then I had the thought, I just have to be brave. And even that's not it. It's moving back to the conscious piece that everything is unfolding. Everything is held in balance, even when it looks like, everything's being, or feels in your own life like everything's being torn down. And so consciousness isn't this pie in the sky. It's an actual practice. It's like yesterday I was at Lowe's and I saw this work van with ladders on the top, dents and scratches. It's definitely a working person's vehicle, and it had one bumper sticker on it which read, "Nothing in the world can stop the awakening of humanity."
I love that. It's so great, and we are waking up. That's part of that is one of the hidden dynamics behind the collapse that is taking place in the world today.
Well, that bumper sticker was like a little gift to me, just kind of out of place sitting there on that work van in the Lowe's parking lot. But it was this reminder that everything is okay, that we are waking up, and nothing is going to hinder that or stop that.
I've never seen a bumper sticker like that before. Maybe we should call this episode "Nothing in the World Can Stop the Awakening of Humanity," because it's how this becomes that. And those answers are now known, but we are separating the answers from setting this up in this episode, because that's going to require a little more time to discuss that we'll do in the second part. But consciousness, suffice it to say, that represents the answers that we are all seeking.
Those are the directions written on the outside of the box.
That is correct. So if the individual does not want to start inquiring about this, if you don't want to start asking the questions, if you do not want to become a student of your life, then it's perfectly okay. There is no judgment in the evolutionary process, but there are consequences, and you may have an interest in judging it for yourself in order to increase the speed and acceleration of the learning process. Because if you don't, then your only choice is to remain unconscious and allow suffering and pain and setback and confusion be the main forces that drive you forward.
And I think deep down inside, I think everybody knows that life shouldn't be like this. We shouldn't be consumed with fear and worry and dis-ease and disconnect from ourselves and from one another. And here we are as human beings, capable of doing literally anything, creating wonderful, beautiful things in art and music and architecture, the incredible talent people have, the genius that people display, the unimaginable skill that people have to do the work that they do, whether it's construction or medicine. And yet we remain unhappy and unfulfilled, and like I said, disconnected even from ourselves, because we don't know who we are and we don't know what we're doing here.
If I had two vans pull up to the house who are going to give me a quote on repairing some work at the house, one bumper sticker says, what did you say?
Nothing in the world can change or stop the awakening of humanity.
Okay, that's one, but the other bumper sticker says, life sucks. Who am I going to hire?
Yeah.
I'm going to hire the inspired one. I'm going to hire the, because it's a higher level of thinking,
and of being.
And we all deal with that. But I want to go back to the consciousness thing for just a minute. The invisible, the one consciousness, truth consciousness, God. Sometimes I call it I don't call it this. I learned these words in a book called Stalking the Wild Pendulum, where the author referred to consciousness as omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient, which of course it is. But I also think that every human being seeks that in their own way, sometimes not even realizing that that's what they seek.
I think that's an important point. That it's going to happen whether we realize it or not. But,
absolutely.
Yeah.
The bumper sticker is true. But the bumper sticker also veils how it's going to do that, which is what our work is about. And helping people understand that the skills that they need are the skills that they have inside of them. Mm-hmm. It is the truth of who they are. So the visible multiplicity, the 7 to 8 billion people that are alive on the planet, lost, seeking but never finding, staying stuck in the web of the mind, being in circumstances that they feel so powerless to change. I understand that. There is this wonderful, very short spiritual concept called as above, so below. And what it suggests is that as it is with God or consciousness, so it must be here on earth. It's not that there is consciousness, it's that you are consciousness. And consciousness is and must be identical with that which produced it, which is God itself, or you could say fulfilled, joyful, perfect. Being fulfilled, living an extraordinary life of understanding.
And I think that's one of the hardest things, Haydn, that you just kind of solved, which is the reason we can't find it is we think it's out there.
Right, exactly.
And yet what you just said is it's not that I have to go out and find consciousness, I am.
Well, it's the game of hide and go seek. Which is what every human being is dealing with. Whatever the source is of who you are, whatever is the source of your birth, your being, that is also who you are. As I think we may have said in one of the previous episodes, that if it's true about the universe, it's true about you. But we have to move beyond the mental of being aware of that and becoming consciously involved in becoming that. And that is the movement from self-awareness to consciousness. Everything else is really but an illusion of your mind.
One of my favorite lines from Savitri is, "The life you live conceals the light you are." And who hasn't had the experience of saying something or doing something that did not reflect who you really are? You said something and later you regretted it, like that was so thoughtless, sometimes even cruel, because we often are just speaking from the ego or from habit. The ego that got hurt or aggravated or kind of bumped into feeling dismissed in some way. And we have to begin to associate our lives, even the crazy mind, with the metaphysical, with consciousness, for that is who you are. Your mind and all the difficulties you experience, they begin to shift the closer it gets to true knowledge, which is sometimes hard to know what's true today. But knowledge is not an aspect of the mind, it's an aspect of consciousness.
The mind is not capable of creating consciousness, but it is capable of learning about it and organizing it.
And that's a fundamental truth that's at the heart of this conversation. If consciousness is one, O-N-E, then there can only be one world. If the creator is the source of the many, then life is essentially a reflection of the perfection of its source. And to bring it into something in the physical world, an acorn, for example, comes from its source, then oak tree, and then it becomes an oak tree. It can't do anything else besides that. It can't become something other than what it's here to become. The same is true for us. So acknowledging this, it doesn't make me or Haydn experts in this,
No such thing.
In fact, every day I realize how little I know, and I'm a beginner, to say that's kind of maybe even exaggerating it. I'm a beginner on this ladder of awakening, just like everyone else. But the difference lies in the seeking. Being aware that this something else is what I want, what I aspire for, what I choose in my life. And we often talk about the alpha and the omega as if they're separate. The context and the content, the metaphysical and the physical, the vertical and the horizontal, heaven and earth, as if these are separate things. We treat them as two different realities. But what we're suggesting is that there's really only one. The omega, which is the physical, is simply a tool of the alpha, the spiritual, to experience itself in form, in other words, in you. Only one of them can truly exist as a primary reality because there's only one consciousness. It's not our illusion being real and the truth being real. There's no such thing as alternate truth in this case. Speaking of Omega, if you would like to explore the meaning of your life and how to live a more conscious life, we'd love for you to join us. Haydn and I are going to be at the Omega Institute July 31st through August 2nd. It's in Rhinebeck, New York. It's a beautiful retreat center, and it's going to be a wonderful weekend to participate personally in this movement from self-awareness to consciousness. There are details about it in the show notes. Now, I realize that people don't like having their realities, their comfortable illusions, their blankets and rocking chairs messed with, and these concepts can be really challenging, for all of us. But until you make a conscious ascent toward this knowledge, you aspire to know more than you know today, you're going to continue to suffer, just like I do. That suffering is reason enough to consider that something else is going on. I think about the torture I've put myself through because I got so wrapped around some emotional axle. It did absolutely no good and was totally unnecessary. But if this struggle was all there was to life, there'd be no point. But of course, there is a point. And I think one more analogy, because that's my thing, is analogies, Haydn, could be computers. We can think of our mind as this processor in a computer, which is actually what it is. And in the world of technology, we always have to have these constant improvements and updates. I feel like daily the printer's asking me to update it because we require these fast, highly functioning processors to handle all the information that we're accessing. But why don't we require the same from ourselves? We just get stuck in our own patterns and we don't expect any kind of upgrade. We don't expect an upgrade from our systems, our politicians, our parents, our teachers, and most importantly, inside our own minds, our own being. I was thinking about this, Haydn. It aggravates us both to death. My mom has a Windows 7 computer that basically doesn't work anymore because they released Windows 7 in 2007?
2007,
something like that.
It was called so.
And good point. And they ended technical support for it. So now you're the technical support. But they ended technical support for it in 2017. I mean, it's only a 10-year lifespan before the whole system became obsolete. And human life is no different. We can't keep things the same. We can't keep doing like, why does this keep happening to me? Why does this keep happening to me? And we also can't go back. The operating, system of the unconscious human, the one built on shame or regret, separation, blaming other people or circumstances, just these reactionary habits that we came up with when we were in kindergarten. It's reaching its end of life cycle. It has its glitches for sure, and we're all familiar with those.
It's an obsolete operating system, and and that's okay. That's just the way that it goes. But here we are in 2026, and we can't even agree to stop killing one another.
Well, guess what, Haydn?
What?
I have the Cliff's Notes for that upgrade for the new system.
You what? You what?
Yeah, I have the Cliff's Notes. Remember Cliff's Notes? They're like you don't have to read the whole thing. You just get the...
Where'd you get them? Well, if you've got the Cliff Notes, then everybody needs a copy of them, because anybody paying attention in the world right now kind of wants a new download.
Yeah, for this becoming process.
Right,
it's the Cliff's Notes for the becoming process. But
well, how come you didn't give me a copy of the Cliff Notes?
I will. So here's the catch. The notes, we've always had them actually, and we just didn't know where to look. We had all these blinders on that really kept us from seeing that. We've been trying to solve this metaphysical crisis of identity, of why am I here, who am I really, with our minds, with kind of the physical world, with our doing. It's like trying to fix a software crash by just Windexing the screen.
Right. So the technical support is actually, and not to be tried or trying to be funny, the technical support is actually consciousness that the physical simply cannot provide. It's the only thing that you need in order to get out of the box.
So in part 2 of this podcast, we're going to stop just looking at the walls. We're going to stop talking about consciousness. We're going to open those Cliff's Notes and finally read what they say. We're going to help you trade in that old glitchy, ego for thou art that, move from this to that version.
And thou art that, I don't know if you're saying that because of your memory of where that phrase came from, thou art that, but comes from it's in the Shandogya Upanishad, where a teacher is speaking to a student and he reminds him, I think it is said like 12 or 14 times, thou art that.
And I did remember that. I want to share another quote from the poet Rumi, where he said, you wander from room to room hunting for the diamond necklace that's already around your neck. The necklace is already yours. The Cliff's Notes are written. Your freedom, your liberation isn't something you have to go out and get. It's something you can learn to see.
It's not about finding a new you. It's about understanding and remembering who you are. So in the next episode, this is going to be very different. We are now moving into, okay, here's where the answers are, because unless that can be articulated, then it cannot be learned. And so there's some kind of technical difficulties that I intend to address. They may come across as being a little confrontational, but this is the path that is being laid before us in today's world. Until then, remember that consciousness eventually finds the means to reveal the answer to any problem you have. It's kind of like in Jurassic Park, where I can't remember who says it, and I think I'm verbatim. He said, "Life finds a way," and it does. But
Jeff
now,
Goldblum.
Jeff Goldblum, thank you. But now that process is speeding up, and the realization alone is worth the price of anything you have to go through in order to start learning about this. So in the next episode, we're getting down and dirty. And so in the next episode, we're going straight to, okay, here's what this is all about, and here's where it is, and here's how you can start learning about this.
So we'll see you next week. So if this conversation is of interest to you, if it's inspiring you to learn more, we would love to have you join our online community. It's called Becoming You Journey. You can find out all about it on our website, truthspringasheville.com, where you will also see a link to the workshop that we have July 31st through August 2nd at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. We would love to be able to connect with you in person, so please reach out anytime. Take care and have a wonderful week.
Thank you so much.